Should we just get this beef train rolling down the gravy wagon holes?
Butterscotch shenanigans.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 96 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast of Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, I'm the bonanza-ist.
That's it. That's just two of us today.
Yep.
And today is May 2nd, 2017. We have a warning before you listen. Just know anything could happen on this show. It's basically the Twilight Zone of podcasts. And also there's going to be swearing.
Yeah.
Just like the Twilight Zone.
Much like the Twilight Zone.
So if you're a child or just a person who's upset by profanity.
Or creepy things.
Then stop listening. All right, so first, obviously, the first question we need to address is, where's Sam?
Where is Sam?
So Sam is currently undergoing a painful medical condition. He doesn't have cancer. He's fine. He's not dying.
Yeah.
But basically, right now, existence is pain for Sam. He's essentially a Meeseeks, a Mr. Meeseeks. So he's just staying home and not doing anything.
Yeah.
As recommended.
Next week is assuming he's back in business. If he wants to violate his own HIPAA, then that's fine. He can tell you all about this horrible, gruesome, disgusting disease that he has, but we will not talk about it and violate his privacy on the podcast.
He is essentially a zomboid, though. And we've also discovered, we've kind of rediscovered the healing magic of video games through this experience because Sam can't do anything much during the days. And so in the evenings, Adam and I have taken it upon ourselves to become Sam's Diablo buddies. Diablo pals.
Diabluddies.
Yeah. Because, if you've got a video game to take your mind off of stuff, you can focus on it. And, you combine that with some really great painkillers and you're good to go, right?
Yeah.
And I think, in Diablo, Sam and I are playing on hardcore mode. We're playing as two super beefy lady barbarians. And we just rampage across the countryside, hitting things so hard that their skin comes off. Which I think, if you're just kind of like in a general like rough spot,
and you just need to knock something's skin off.
You just need to hit something so hard to knock its skin off, but you don't want to actually hit something.
Yeah.
Then you can do it in a video game.
Yeah.
And otherwise, the office has been super quiet because basically everybody is having just a myriad just medical scenarios. Everybody's fine generally. Nobody's dying, but there's just been it's been a rough couple of weeks. But we still have some news, which is the Humble Bundle starts today at the day we're recording this.
Yeah. So your yesterday, if
you're listening to this on the day it comes out, we put Crashins into Humble Bundle.
Yeah.
And in the past, we've talked about not wanting to do that.
And that we would basically never do that, I think is probably what we said at the time.
And we lied right to everyone's faces.
And we also didn't make an announcement previously that we were going to be in an upcoming bundle, mostly because they don't want you to talk about these kinds of things.
Yeah.
So it was a secret until this very moment.
Yeah. So there's a couple points. One is, why didn't we want to do it? And the other is, why are we doing it?
I guess we have to think back to right. And a lot of what we talk about on the podcast is our
rethink things.
Yeah, well, we're constantly rethinking things, and we're trying to come up with. We're just always asking why do stuff, right? And when we've been presented with opportunities to be in bundles on multiple occasions. In the past, one of the things we've talked about is this issue of suddenly when you do a bundle, an enormous number of free keys
just
flood the market. And the question is, does that suppress prices of your games in other markets? So if you put stuff up in Humble and you sell it for basically 20 cents a piece is kind of what it comes out to. Actually, 80 cents a piece is what we calculated out as, which is just free.
Free enough.
Then, and of course, but people are buying them in a bundle. So actually a large fraction of people who buy it don't even play it.
They don't even know they're buying the bundle for a different game.
Exactly. Right. Or just because it's cheap. And so they
just buy that. They redeem the key for the game they wanted.
Right.
And then they just forget about all the other keys.
Yep. So the question is, now that you have all this enormous number of cheap keys in the market that people then can go resell, does that now suppress your ability to sell the game at the regular price or even just regular sale price on other platforms? And that was one of our major worries, was that. But of course, also just that if we sell it for super cheap so that a whole bunch of people buy it for really, really cheap when they would have been willing to buy it for less cheap, then it's basically us shooting ourselves in the foot and not being able to sustain the studio for as long because we've just kind of thrown away, financial opportunity.
Yep.
So those were the main, I think, was that right? That sound right?
Pretty much, yeah. We don't want to suppress the price of the game. We don't want to flood the market with stuff, blah, blah, blah. But then there's kind of the flip side of it, which is once we had the opportunity to be in this bundle, we're like, okay, let's think through our rationales.
Rethink it. Yep.
And because this is an opportunity to do an experiment, right?
Yep.
And basically what we discovered after digging around, looking at a lot of data, talking to other people who have done bundles and stuff, is you can almost think about the normal market of your game, like Steam or whatever, as being a totally standalone independent market.
Well, maybe that was the big question,
right?
Is can we?
Can you? Yeah. And then like basically, are there people who just like buy games on Steam at full price, and then separately people who tend to just buy games out of bundles,
right?
And then also separately, again, people who just buy keys off of resellers for super cheap, right?
So
and the answer seems to be maybe,
yeah. So because
it's definitely not a no,
right? Because the idea here is that if it's the case that
if they're just separate markets,
they're separate markets, so that when we go sell, effectively super cheap copies of the game on Humble, are those people who just never would have bought the game,
just period, ever
at even at a regular sale price, on Steam? Because if that's the case, then actually we just get more players now. We just get more players. Yeah. And for a game like Crashlands, where there's no really extensive online component, so it doesn't actively cost us very much money per customer, then even if we sell the game for really cheap, we still do better than having not sold the game at all.
Yep. And of course, we get a lot more people into Butterscotch ID too, which is great for future stuff. So So it seems like that may be what's going to happen.
Maybe. Well, we'll see. And we got this from looking at Steam Spy statistics and from talking to a few other studios who very kindly shared some data with us. That generally because the big question we had was, okay, well, once your sale ends, once your Humble sale ends, do you see a dip in sales on Steam or mobile or wherever else you're selling your game relative to where it was before? Yes, the Humble sale, or does it basically look the same as far as you can tell? And of course, there's a lot of noise there, so it is very hard to tell. But if it's within noise that you can't really tell, then that's probably fine. The answer is probably it's fine. And what we tended to see was that for the really popular games in the bundles, it looked like something on the order of 40 to 60% of keys that were sold got redeemed. For the really popular ones. The less popular ones, it was far less. It was only like 20% of those.
Yeah. So if you sell 850 million keys on Humble, you're just going to get a lot of new players.
Right. So something like, but it's still like 40 or 60% is then still a lot.
Still a
lot. So you still get a lot of new players in. And then we look at Steam Spy, and so we basically look at the number of copies sold according to Humble, look at the activation rate according to Steam Spy, look at the before and after rates of the player base and so on, and then also talk to people who have more direct access to their data from the actual studios themselves. And as far as we can tell,
it's probably fine.
It's probably fine. And it seemed to be that there might be a little bit of a dip in Steam sales in like the week following a Humble sale. But again, who knows? Because we don't have enough data to really say. And it seemed like it recovered after that. And so we think it actually might be totally fine.
Well, and I think the rationale for this came too because we noticed that when we do sales on mobile or on Steam or whatever, you would think that doing a sale would, again, like people who would previously have just bought your game at full price, just kind of as part of your normal trickle of players every day, they would all buy it in a big batch. And then you would see kind of like a vacuum after the sale. We don't actually see that.
No. And it seems to, what that seems to mean is that basically every time you do a sale or somehow get visibility,
just more people hear about it.
Right. And they're different people.
And they're just different people.
Right. And even those people who are willing to buy your game at some point and just haven't yet, who are either waiting for a sale or waiting to see it again or whatever, every time you do a sale or somehow get it in front of their eyeballs, they still have to make the decision, am I going to buy it this time?
Yeah.
Maybe they do, maybe they don't, give another opportunity in the future. And so that seems to be kind of the rationale for having just frequent repeated sales of varying amounts, is just to kind of remind people, hey, this exists. Are you ready yet? Right?
How about now?
And it really doesn't seem like actually, I do think it probably would be true that within a single market, that if you did something just steep enough of a sale, you could probably impact future sales. Probably.
Yeah.
But even then, my bet is, having looked at all this data, now we've collected it and seen what actually happens. It's probably actually a limited effect, and might in the end, because if you move enough copies of your game that people start talking about it again and then share it with other people and so on, that you still might end up actually, even on the better side, having done a steep sale.
Yeah.
Just by bringing more people.
Well, now what I'm curious about are these sort of free app of the day or free app of the week concepts,
right?
Which
we've also been presented with.
We've been presented with these opportunities, and we're very dubious about, because there's a big difference between selling something for cheap and just giving a thing away.
Yeah,
I think
an enormous difference.
And so we don't know about that yet. We're not planning on it.
No, and my gut still says
says no.
Yeah, but
anyway, so that's coming today. We got the humble dumble. So if you want to get more keys for your buddies, if you've already got Crashlands or whatever, or if you played our other games and haven't played Crashlands yet, you want to get it on the cheap. Well, now's your chance.
Yeah, we would of course prefer that you get it on the expensive. But,
yeah,
you do you.
Yeah, like we'd
Whatever
prefer if you
do.
just bought the game and then also just mailed us a huge check.
Yeah, that would
also
be ideal.
So if you want to do that too, that's fine. We also have upcoming. We have the Butterscotch Shenana Jam or Butterscotch Shenana Jam. It's a game jam. It's a celebration of our upcoming 100th episode,
which is 96.
Which is 96.
4 weeks,
4 episodes from now. And the jam is going to be occurring over Memorial Day weekend, so it'll be May 26th through 28th. And if those of you haven't done a game jam before, a game jam is a 48-hour event where at the start of the event you get a theme. And you have 48 hours to make a video game. And so through the Butterscotch Shenana Jam, we also have a ranking system or a rating system where the participants can rate each other's games on.
Is that just part of
categories.
Itch? Is that how that?
It's just, yeah, it's done through Itch.
Okay.
So if you want to check out the details about it, or if you're interested, go to podcast.bscotch.net, and there's just a giant thing that says Butterscotch Shenana Jam.
Yep.
Just click on that.
There's a link in there. It's just,
yeah. So we have 82 people signed up, or 82 groups, or whatever it comes out to be. So we're hoping to get at least 100 people involved in this thing.
If we get 100 people for 100th episode.
Yeah. If we get anywhere from at least 30 to 50 games come out of this thing, that would be freaking awesome.
That would be stellar.
And so we also have a Discord channel. We have a community Discord channel for the Shenana Jam where we'll be hanging out in there during the jam while we're making our games and just kind of, just shooting the shit with everybody who's making games. And we also plan on, after the jam, pulling down some of the sort of top rated games that are that come out of the jam and do a little YouTube playthrough of them and kind of just giving our critique on them and giving our feedback on stuff. So yeah, it should be a super fun time. And even if you've never done a jam before, you've never, done one of these things, just do it. Just do it anyway.
Yeah.
Because worst case scenario, make a shitty game.
Yeah.
Which is still better than what you had done before.
Worst case scenario, you struggle and can't even get something in the end that works. But we'll have learned a whole bunch.
You learned a bunch of stuff.
And then the next time you try to do it, you'll be that much closer to actually getting it pulled off,
Yeah. I mean, you have nothing to lose except for literally an entire weekend, which is a lot, but still.
Yeah, but
what else were you going to do?
Yeah, what else is that for anyway? Although it is Memorial Day weekend, which means probably a lot of people have family stuff and
remembering things.
Remembering memories.
Yeah. So, I mean, there is that. So just think about it. Think about it and then do it. Go to podcast.bscotch.net, click on Butterscotch Shenana Jam, get your hat in the donkey.
Yeah, I would actually just say, don't think about it. Do it.
Just do it.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a couple questions about the jam. Kulabula asks, by the way, these questions come from podcast.bscotch.net. Kulabula asks, do you sleep for 8 hours per day during a game jam to restore your dangs, or is that looked down upon?
And this is something that we like to give tips leading up to these things. So we're going to try to do that over the next few weeks.
Yes.
This is a super important one. Sleep. Actually, a game jam is not about putting your body through any kind of stress whatsoever. It's not about eating crappy. It's not about not sleeping. It's none of that stuff. It's actually taking away literally all of the other stuff.
It's about taking crap away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're going to say, you take care of all of your house stuff. You pay all your bills. You do all your homework. You do everything else that could be on your brain. And
you send your kids to Disney World.
Yep. Send your kids to your random relative or have some stranger take care of them,
just put them out in the yard.
Send your significant other to some stranger to take care of.
Right.
You get, or ideally have them come make a game with you. That would be best.
And
with your kids, whatever. Bring everybody in the fold or kick them out. Those are your two options. And make sure everybody around you is supportive and knows you're buckling down and getting work done.
So they're not going to come in and be like, I know you got this thing going on, but would you mind?
Yeah.
Because the answer is no.
The answer is always no.
I do mind.
But you got to be responsible by taking care of all that stuff ahead of time.
Yep.
Right. So the idea of the jam is you just clear out the cobwebs first, which is already very cathartic and good, because now you just roll into the weekend and just nothing.
And you got one thing.
You got one thing.
You are John Wick. You are a person of singular purpose, and nothing's going to stop you. You're gonna
murder 72 games.
You're gonna sledgehammer a hole in your basement, and you're gonna get your laptop out of it.
Yeah,
that's right. You're gonna boot it up.
Yep.
And it's game on.
Yep.
It's time. All right. So sleep for 8 hours a day. Take care of yourself. Eat healthy.
Even exercise,
or just eat many eggs. I mean, eggs are healthy, so it's fine.
Yeah, we definitely do a bad job of eating healthy during jams, but
it would be better if we did.
It would be better.
We don't, but it would be better if we did. All right, another jam question comes from Menalus. If I don't have the ability to create a game in 48 hours,
everybody does.
Could I start my game early? Come on, hand me a free pass. You said there weren't any rules. Love what you do, guys. Never stop.
Never stop. Never stopping.
Yeah. So. I don't know if we said there weren't any rules.
Did we? I can't remember. I haven't read the thing. You wrote it though. Did you say there were no rules?
I don't think we said there's no rules. Yeah. So this kind of comes back to that question of if you could, if you wanted to, start your game now, I guess, and then just kind of crappily and slowly piece it together 1 hour per day over the next 4 weeks.
Yep.
You could do that. It's not going to be even remotely as interesting. And also, I think this is one of those things that you have to focus on.
It's also much more about the experience than it is about the product.
Yeah. So you do have the ability to create a jam in 48 hours, especially knowing that you have 4 weeks. Hours. You have 4 weeks to figure out what that even means.
Right.
So you can go through tutorials. You can pick up Inkscape and start learning how to get art assets put
together. You can do your own little weekend jams ahead of time, or your own little evening jams of a few hours at a time, seeing how much can I do in a very short period of time.
So your next 4 weeks are not for slowly piecing together something that you're going to then submit for the Shenanigan Jam.
Mm-hmm.
The next 4 weeks are for getting yourself revved, getting your brain engine,
learning the things you need to know, being creative, practicing your drawing.
Yeah. And of course, do your morning pages.
Yeah.
Get up every morning and write for a little while and start and get your thoughts in order.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, you cannot do this.
Yes, no.
Yes, no, you must make the game during the 48-hour period. So get prepared. Buckle your pants. All right, next question comes from Killer Pricola. Any advice for starting college?
We sort of changed tacks here. We should probably take a moment. So we were talking about jam questions.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Now we're just going
into regular questions. Yeah, and these questions come from podcast.bscotch.net. And if you want to ask, you can get yourself a Bscotch ID, or you can ask anonymously. But we're going to be more likely to answer if we know who you are.
Yeah.
Then we can track you down.
Right.
So, all right. So the next question comes from Killer Pricole. Any advice for starting college? I want to get into computers or criminal justice.
Those are two different
pretty
things.
Divergent things. This kind of reminds me of when I started college and I thought I wanted to do either film or video games or exercise science.
Nice.
So I just kind of did.
I tried darts.
Tried all of them. And I ended up just taking, like you do in college, several years of general education courses.
Yep.
And during that time, I ended up doing what a lot of people probably do, which is at one point I took a introductory course and had a very enthusiastic professor.
Yep.
And I was like, shit, this is awesome. Right. Because it was the first time in my life that I had been taught something by somebody who cared about that thing.
Right.
And so it was economics. And so I became an economics major.
Yeah.
And then later I ran into another professor who was a super enthusiastic finance professor.
Mm-hmm.
And then I became a finance major also.
Yep. Which is all to say, if you're going to college with the goal of doing a specific thing, that might turn out to be a little trickier than you expected. And
especially if you've already got two options, because that means you don't actually know.
That means you don't know, right?
Yeah. So I think it depends on kind of what your end goal is. But if you're going to go to college, I think there's an important thing to know about college, which is college isn't actually there to make you good at stuff.
No, it is absolutely not.
It's there to introduce you to a lot of things. And at a certain point, after a couple of years, you declare a major, and
which is the thing you're supposed to be good at.
It's the thing you're supposed to be good at, but really, what you end up with is, I mean, how many credit hours does it take to get a major? Like
I don't
40
know.
something usually, something like
very
that. Of sort of like classes that are specific to that thing. It may even be less than that. It may be like 20 something, credit hours. And it's just the case that doing something basically less than part-time, like you're probably spending less than 20 hours a week on your major, because you also have other things you got to do, right? For essentially like a year and a half, your last third of college or so is just not enough to be an expert at that thing, or to even be very good at it.
Yeah.
Really, you really get the feel for things once you get out into the field and start having to
full
actually,
time.
having to actually apply things full time and doing it 60 hours a week or 40 hours a week instead of 14 or whatever. So, if you're going to college, I think there's a question of like, should you go to college?
An important question.
Because I think it kind of depends on what your discipline is. You see a lot of people who go to college for art and they end up with $100,000 of debt. And had they just spent that time just doing art, they may actually have been better off, be a better artist and have no debt in the end. So,
or even just hire a single tutor. For those 4 years.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's increasingly becoming a question of, if you're going into a discipline that demands a degree like medicine or being a lawyer or something like that, then yeah, I mean, you do it. You go to college because that's one of the prerequisites, right? If you're going there to get a skill like programming,
you're probably doing it wrong in that case.
I don't know. I don't know if you should do it these days. Is that bad advice?
Well, I mean, you have to know why you're doing
trying
things.
to do.
Yeah, exactly. I think to me, this is the real problem. It's not even like what college actually does and so on. It's that people go to college for no good reason. They just do
That's
it because,
why I went for no good reason.
And I personally had a reason to go. It turned out that reason shifted once I got there. And for me personally, it was actually a good decision to go to college, but that was mostly because of where I went and because of why I went. And then those things aligned together.
Yep.
And so sort of like for me, everything lined up in the proper way for that to actually work out. But even still, like I didn't really think about it the way I should have going into it. I could have gotten more out of it had I been thinking about it more clearly. And the question that I truly never asked myself before I went to college was just why. Why
am I here?
What is this? I just had this kind of vague idea that I wanted to be a scientist, and so I knew to do that, I had to learn what it meant to be a scientist. I didn't know how to find that out, but college seemed to be the next step in that direction. And it turned out, again, because of where I went, what I was interested in, good professors, all that kind of stuff, that all lined up just fine. But if you don't actually know why you're going, if you just have this sort of nebulous thing and you don't really know why,
consider not
or consider doing it later, because the other thing too is that,
well, debt,
debt is the problem.
Debt is nothing to sneeze at.
No.
If you got $100,000 of debt and you're in your early 20s, I mean, that's
which you basically just accumulated to go to parties and flounder around academically, not knowing what you're trying to accomplish.
What people don't think about is like these student loans are like 6%.
Yeah, they're fucking
enormous. $100,000 paid off over 15 years at 6%. You're paying double or more. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy how much you're losing.
It's very expensive. So you just have to ask, what is it you're trying to get out of it? And in which there is enormous value. And actually what I mostly got out of my college experience, but again, not on purpose. It's just in retrospect, I got a good thing out of it, was the general education with a focus. And mostly what I learned from my college experience was how to think about stuff, which is invaluable. And something that mostly you don't learn by learning a skill or something like that. Right. And that actually, in many ways, can be taught by having a very diverse array of people trying to bring different kinds of knowledge to you, because then you have to think about them all differently. You just learn how to think about stuff.
But it's very easy to also not learn that.
Exactly.
Right?
You don't just get it.
You get out what you put in.
Exactly.
Right? Like in all things.
And I know it's certainly the case that most of my classmates, though they were going to the same courses and doing all that, did not get what I got out of it because
they didn't do anything.
Yeah, they had parties to go to, right?
Well, so I think about this. I guess to kind of help to answer that question though is if you were to go to a bank, view yourself as a small business, right?
Yeah.
Because like for most people going to college is like it's a career move.
Right.
Right.
It's an investment.
So it's an investment. It's an investment into your financial future.
Yeah.
You're going to college to get some new skills and learn new things, which supposedly will make you better off in life and open up new career avenues and income potential and new interesting jobs and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about it from that perspective, if you go to a bank and view yourself as a small business and you pitch your college plan, right? Saying, I plan on, I'm going to be spending 4 years. I'm going to probably spend about 20 hours a week partying, about 15 hours a week, like watching Netflix. I'm going to take the minimum number of credit hours. I don't quite know what I'm going to do there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll probably figure out my major after 3 years.
Yep.
And then I'll kind of quickly scramble it together at the end. Could I have $100,000?
Which is really what you're asking for when you ask for a student loan.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you wonder, why is that rate so high for paying it back, right? It's because although loans aren't really risky because you can't get rid of them.
You can't get rid of student. That's
the
another
principle,
important point, though, is you literally can't get out of a student loan.
Yeah.
You can declare bankruptcy.
And you still have a student loan.
Yeah, like if you've got a house, you got a mortgage on the house, right? The house is there as collateral.
Yeah.
Right. And so you default on your loans, you declare bankruptcy or whatever, the bank just takes the house back and you're like, well, fuck it, I don't have a house now. But the loan is gone.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure, your credit's completely fucked.
Everything else is fucked, but the loan is gone.
Right.
So in the case of a student loan, you are the collateral.
Yeah.
And you're not going away, right? Like no matter how many times you declare
and
bankruptcy.
banks can't actually own you yet.
Right.
So
the government can through student loans.
Exactly.
So anyways, this is definitely sort of off the rails of any advice for starting college. But I think the advice is,
well, but then it comes back to that, right?
Should you?
Well, it's not even that. It's know why you're there. It doesn't mean necessarily know like what major you're going for or whatever. It just means know what your goals are and pay attention to the fact that you are investing an enormous amount of time and money. Even at the cheapest school, you are still investing an enormous amount of money. And then again, your time has value, right? So you're putting an enormous amount of stuff in there, and literally almost everybody wastes that time. And they waste that money.
Yeah.
Don't be one of those people. If you're going to do it, fucking crush it.
Yeah.
Identify good classes. Never take the minimum workload. I took the maximum workload all the way through college. Was even recommended to not do it by my own advisors in my college. And
like, are you sure you want to learn stuff this hard?
I know. And to be fair, all I did was I ate, slept, and breathed studying.
But that's what you're
I
there
didn't
for.
do those other things actually. But yeah, it was, and I got out an enormous amount. But yeah, don't just do it because you're supposed to. It's way too expensive for that.
Yeah. And also remember, like, these things that you're learning in college, you're not learning them for a grade. You're learning them for a reason.
Yeah.
So know what that reason is.
Yeah.
And actually think about how useful all these things are.
You should get good grades as an accident because of how pumped you are about learning the stuff that you're learning.
Yeah.
You should never on purpose get an A. That should literally never happen.
Yeah.
It should just so happen that you got an A because you're diligent and understood.
And it's interesting because Adam and I had sort of inverted college experiences.
Yeah.
In a sense that Adam went in and went really hard,
mm-hmm.
and I went in and didn't. Like, I went really as soft as possible. And looking back, we both have the same advice.
Yeah. Right.
Which is Adam's looking at what he did and is like, I'm glad I did that way. And I'm looking back and I'm like, I wish I had done it the way Adam did, right? Because I just didn't get as much out of it as I should have.
Yeah.
And I barely got anything out of it at all in the first couple of years.
Right.
So, as with all things, if you're going to do a thing, do it.
Yeah.
Do the shit out of it and give a crap.
Yeah. And if you just literally have no idea what you're doing, or if you're just like, I'm just going to just ramble on and do whatever or party, whatever, just don't go to college yet. Just get a fucking job. Learn what it means to like be an adult with responsibility and then start from there. And it definitely was the case that the people who I knew in college who crushed it the hardest and got the most out of it were those who had already had some sort of life between high school and college where they just they saw what the world was like and they could see how college didn't reflect that at all. Like not even a little bit, and how much of an amazing opportunity it was to just be able to even go and do that. And effectively in a lot of ways, just kind of throw money away to do that, right? Because that's kind of what you're doing.
Yeah.
In a lot of respects, unless you identify that and realize that, so that you can now, instead of it just being a place where you dump money and time, is now a thing where you get to choose what you're actually investing in.
Yes.
So yeah.
Advised.
Think about it.
This is now an advice podcast.
It kind of always was.
Yeah.
It also always wasn't.
There you go. All right, next question.
It might be bad advice.
Well, we have another learning question. Today's a day about learning. Next question comes from Tilly 340. Hey guys, just got accepted into and will be attending a programming boot camp for .NET and C#.
.NET, huh?
Wondering what your thoughts are on this form of education.
I'm a big proponent of
Boots.
boot camp style stuff. Boots are also
Camping.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Camping, I'm not that
Camping
into, really.
sucks, but boots are pretty dope.
The outside is nice as long as it's right outside my house, so that I can walk back inside.
Maybe you should look into getting into a boot glamp.
Oh yeah,
That's going to be a lot more luxurious.
that's true.
I would think.
Try boot glamping.
Yeah. So what even is a boot? What is a boot glamp?
So a boot glamp
Or
is or a boot. Yeah, we should probably actually say specifically a boot camp. So I did one of these when I was in grad school. That was just fucking phenomenal. But a lot of this depends on, it's just like college. Anyone you go to, you're gonna get out not only what you put in, but also what the thing can provide. And so when I was in grad school, I went to a place called Woods Hole, which is a place in, I want to say Massachusetts, I don't know. But it's this famous marine biological laboratory. It's just called MBL. It's the Marine Biological Laboratory, apparently.
The one.
So they just
It's
get
like
to
the
be
one
called
ring.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So they just get to be called MBL. You got to throw it at a volcano. There's eagles, whatever.
It can't be destroyed except for
Yeah.
by the fires of Mount Doom.
And it's done a pretty good job because it's just like sitting by the ocean and still exists, which is always impressive.
For now.
But this place is famous because they have these basically boot camp style programs for sort of college level, but largely for graduate level and beyond, actually, where they bring in professors and people who are trying to learn sort of the cutting edge of some piece of knowledge, or are trying to get into a new field and are like very smart people who already know a fuck ton about something, who they want
Which
to.
is a lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
But is it imperial or metric fuck ton is an important distinction.
Yeah. Well, obviously it's an imperial fuck ton because we're in the US and
Exactly. And we're
that's how we
imperialists.
roll.
so you bring people who already they know how to work, they know how to study, and so on. And then you bring them in and then they're now taught by experts in some other field, where the only knowledge that you can actually get is from those people, because they're the only people who actually have it in their brains. And then it's like from sun up to sundown, day after day, for anywhere between a week and 4 weeks of just crushing the shit out of learning this thing. And so I did that. I did a 10-day course for computer vision, but with applications in microscopy, because that's what I was doing in the lab. And it was a blast. But I love working my ass off and stuff, right? But it was literally, I would wake up, eat a very tiny breakfast, run into the computer lab, and then just power through.
Just do the shit out of
all day,
microscopy
right?
computer
Yeah,
vision.
so then I get to the end of it, and I had all these cool programs. They're doing weird, cool, interesting stuff. Learned a bunch of new math that I didn't know. And then, it's like 10 p.m. rolls around. It's just pitch black outside. And then I stumble home in a confused dazed state, go to sleep, wake up.
Try to sleep, I assume.
Try to
You're
sleep.
Probably
Exactly,
pretty revved up.
Yeah, your brain's all just jazzed up. And then, rinse, repeat, recycle, right? And
Again, it's like a game jam.
it is a game jam. It's exactly a game jam. This is what a boot camp and a jam, these are the same thing for the same reason, which is you throw your entire being into a thing and just forget everything else. And so if you truly do that, instead of do what, again, most people do, which is do that for a few hours and then go party to celebrate how hard they worked, right? Instead of continuing to work hard, because that's the whole point.
Yeah.
If you actually do that,
The hard work is the part.
the hard work is the party, exactly. Then yeah, I personally believe there's no better way to learn something than in the context of a jam or a boot camp, which again are just the same. A boot camp is just a long jam.
So yeah, Tilly, do that
So
jam.
just fucking crush it.
Or do that boot glamp.
But my one advice would be if this is a thing that you're going to with other people instead of like an online one or something, when everybody else at the end of the quote unquote work day is like, hey, let's go meet up at this bar and party down, then you just say, no, I got work to do.
I got work to do.
And you go crush it.
You go party.
Because they're going to
Party
go
for
party.
me.
They're going to get drunk. They're going to go to bed late. They're going to get up the next morning all fucked up. And
They're going to lose a night and a day.
yeah,
And then the next day you've made a video game or you've invented a new type of underpants.
yep. They'll get literally half of the value out of the thing by doing this stuff. And that value compounds.
Yeah.
Right? It's like compound interest. If you invest an enormous amount of time up front, then you get to keep on piling onto that for your entire life. And so it's
And
actually
the next
extremely
night,
costly.
next night they're like, I'm not feeling very good. I'm just going to go out and party tonight because I'm just not in any condition to
work.
get work done.
Yep.
Right. And then the cycle begins.
Yep.
And then 2 years later, you're basically Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And they're still just partying.
Exactly.
So just think about it.
Just think about it.
All right. Next question comes from Kulabula, who's just on a roll this week. Kulabula says, do you think it would be good for busy humans to design games with a 4-hour completion option and a long play option if possible? The sad adult choice is divorce your family or just buy 2 games a year and or just don't complete games and buy all the games and not really play them.
Yeah, I go with the don't complete games. scheme.
Or I'd go with the buy and play a couple games a year
Just
option.
really enjoy them. Yeah. Well, I mean,
Well,
the
'cause
fact is games aren't that good.
Well,
really. Like,
Well, no. I think there's a bigger question here, which is the fun part of the game completing it or playing
It's
it?
playing it. Hopefully.
It's playing it, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, having an option, because it's like, well, if you design a game with a 4-hour option, like, so you take like 60 hours, you can press it down to 4. Why not just
You just
0?
got less game now. Yeah.
Why not just like you hit play? We just show you the ending cutscene.
Yeah. And then you're done.
And you're like, well, I'm glad now. I finished the game.
Yeah.
Now I can go resume not playing this game.
Yeah.
Right. So I think
So you should stop giving a shit about completing a game, and then just when
it's
you
all
find
about
time,
the journey.
it's all about the journey.
You know, just ride that game into the sunset for 6 months, and then you hop on the next.
Or however long you want. Just play a game in your off time until you're tired of it, and then play a new game. Don't worry about how many games you're playing or whether you complete them. Just play them until you don't want to anymore.
Well, I think there's an interesting.
That's what entertainment is for.
Yeah,
There's
there's
an
an interesting problem too, which is with especially with story-driven games, is they often don't give you a frame of reference for where you are. So
Yeah,
like if
true.
you ever like play a Final Fantasy game, and then you pick it up like a month later.
Yeah, you might as well
You
start.
look around,
over
you're
at
just
that
like,
point.
where the fuck am I?
Yeah.
Who are these people?
Yep.
What am I? What level am I? What are my skills? You don't know anything. And so then you just kind of start over, right?
Yep.
And so that was actually something we tried to do with Crashlands was we have the chat log, right?
Yeah.
So every quest kind of, we show you your previous dialogue. Some of them don't quite hit the mark, but for the most part, we try to give you enough context for things. We label lots of stuff on your map, we keep the gameplay fairly straightforward and stuff. And so it's our way of saying, hey, we get it.
Mhm.
You're not always going to play for 40 hours at a stretch. And sometimes you're
and
going
in
to forget
fact-
things.
Well, it is actually interesting because I think it's statistically the case that the vast majority of people only put in, a few hours a week into any game.
Yep.
But games are designed for people who binge play.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because most people actually don't even do that. So why is that how they're designed?
It's all about those mega fans,
Yeah.
the loud people are the ones who have the time.
That's true because they're also the ones who then sell your game.
They
for
finish
you
the
and-
game and then they're like, well, what else am I gonna do? And then they go into
Yeah.
forums and they talk about the game and it's they're the people whose voices get heard.
Right.
So-
And it has always been funny when we go talk to their game developers and they're talking about how they have some new expansion pack or something that they worked on. And they were like, oh, we're pretty sure this adds, like 20 hours of content. And they're really excited to get the thing launched. And then the next day, now a whole bunch of people have finished it. Like all the spoilers are posted
the next day
because they put in 20 hours of content. That
Well, the
takes
fact is,
less than a day for somebody to complete.
Crashlands has anywhere from like 35 to 100 hours of content, depending on your speed of play,
And
how much of a completionist you are, whatever. And we had people finish it. So we launched it, on a Thursday,
Mm-hmm.
and we had some people finish it like late Friday night.
Yeah.
So
It was literally all they did.
yeah,
And
which is cool. It means we
Which is
made a
awesome.
cool thing that people
Yeah.
like, but also it's like, well, fuck, we spent 2 years making that, and
now
it's
you're
done in a day.
Yeah.
Pace yourselves.
Well, it was also the case that by the end of the first week of launch, our large fraction of just the most hardcore players had all finished the game by that point, basically.
Yeah.
And so basically it was just kind of this thing we worked on for 2 years. We launch it and a week later,
Just
like
burns
everybody who's the most excited to buy it is just now done.
Yeah, and then the questions start coming up of like, are you guys gonna do an expansion? We're like, ugh,
We're
we're so tired.
Which is hilarious when people ask for that too, because the as a player, it's sort of something when I was playing games but not associated with making them.
Yeah,
That I didn't really think about at all is just how many human hours went into making
just making the thing as it is.
yeah per hour
Yeah.
of my gameplay experience, right?
Yeah.
And now that we're on the other side of that, we can see, it was 3 of us over 2.5 years or whatever, or 3 years, whatever it was. So yeah, we put in, something like 6 to 9 years of human
years,
years into this, which is a large number of hours. I'm not sure how many that is, but many. And then, but now a person playing it,
just a day and a half.
it's a day and a half.
They're
And-
done.
Yeah. And most players don't, the vast majority of players play it until they kind of get it. So they play it for something in the order of like 5 to 10 hours, right? And so that means most people per hour of gameplay that they put in, the ratio that we put into that is just
It's like 1 year
stupid.
per hour.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just enormous. And then they followed up. Hey, can we get? And actually, most
expansion?
people who ask for expansions haven't even finished the game yet.
Well, that's because they don't want to finish it unless
there's more.
Because again,
they don't want to ever
they
finish
don't
it.
want it to be done.
Right.
You know,
Which again is
it's all about that journey.
Right. Which is a good thing.
I'm also, all right. So next question comes from, oh no, I'm dead. So we
I
should
guess we should move on.
probably move on, but we'll see what they have to say. Oh no, I'm dead says, now that you have experimented with turning off all phone notifications, I'm curious how your various significant others feel about not having interrupt access.
Mhm.
Also, super excited about the jam. So I guess hopefully
You have all your notifications.
I don't know
off
how
during
you're
the
going to jam when you're dead, but
There's also that.
we'll see.
Yeah.
All
So this is a reference to our last
A few podcasts
podcasts ago. We talked about this this experiment we were doing with turning off. Well, we talk a lot about in this podcast of how
We
how
called it the
valuable-
hot duck challenge.
the hot dog challenge of how valuable your attention is, and it's really the only thing that you possess that is of true value to you, right? The only thing you can control, but people are trying to steal it from you all the time.
They're trying to make you party.
Yeah, trying to make you party, trying to make parties in your eyeballs using words and art thrown up on
People sending
screens.
you emails, people making YouTubes,
Yep.
people advertising at
Yep.
your face.
And it's basically people constantly, and that's basically what our phones do, right? Is they provide a vehicle through which other people can just bother you all the time and take your attention. And so we were doing this experiment where we wanted to turn off just literally all notifications so that our phones were just incapable of telling us that somebody wanted to steal our attention. And even further, that you don't even have message counts. Like there's not even, you can't, if you open your phone, you won't even see how many missed calls or messages or whatever you have.
If you want to check your messages, you go check
You
your
just go
messages.
look at your messages so that you just get to decide when people get to bother you. And in fact, you just actually decide they can't.
Yep.
So we were doing this experiment, and then I'm still doing it. It feels really good. Highly recommend it. And my life has been far better having started doing that. But as the astute question asker points out,
It doesn't mean everybody else's life is better
it complicates. Well, and it's also, I mean, we're basically back to where we were before
before cell phones.
the cell phones, right? Which we're old enough that we lived in those days, but we're not so old that we lived a lot, in those days, right? And so I remember what it was like back when you just had to talk to people or call them at home, leave a
Or
message,
just wait till you saw them
or
again.
just wait until you saw them again.
Next
And
month.
so because and at the time we didn't know that there could be something more convenient. And so it was just fine. That was just a thing you did. But it's funny now in retrospect, now that we can just bother people on a moment's notice.
We just don't think about it.
Well, something that we don't think about. It's like we now worry about what would happen if we couldn't do that anymore, right? And so I actually had this conversation with my wife because we were talking about this, and she was like, "Just what if something bad actually happens and I need to talk to you, I need to get hold of you, right?" And my just sort of default response was, "Well, if something really bad happens, it's unlikely I can fix it.
It's like your house starts burning down
Yeah.
while you're at work.
Yeah, call the fire department.
Fire department.
Yeah.
What are you?
You got in
gonna
a car
do about it?
accident. Call the police, get an ambulance, right? There's still, for the most part, emergencies are things you actually can't do anything about, so that was my kind of default response, but that still isn't a fair response because you're not just there as a practical individual in the case of emergencies. You're also there as a emotional support mechanism in the case of emergencies and so on. And so I had to think, okay, well, this is a legit problem, which is that there is exactly basically one person in my life who be
you
able to
are
bother me.
intertwined with
Yeah.
in all things.
Right. And also who we can establish ground rules between each other and say, hey, it's my attention is really important to me. And so I need to know that if you're bothering me, it's because something really important has happened, right? That I need to drop everything and pay attention to. So now the assumption is that an emergency has happened. But the question is, how do I let somebody bother me without also letting everybody else bother me?
How do you do it?
How do you do it? And actually, I don't really know. It turns out we discovered.
Also, I like the use of the term bother.
Because that's what you're doing. You're bothering people. It's important. And even if you're saying there's something nice, even if it's like a super beautiful text message talking about how much you love them and so on, which is great.
You're
The fact that
you're
you're
also telling that person, hey, you need to stop.
you need to
paying
stop what you're
attention
doing and read this,
and
right?
respond.
And so it can be both bothersome and beautiful at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's not
It's
just
not,
pure.
mutually exclusive.
Yeah, it's not pure negative or anything. It's just that somebody is now grabbing your attention. So that was the question. How do I let my wife say, hey, something terrible has happened. You need to come help me deal with it. And allow literally nobody else to ask me for anything without my permission. And it turned out to be very hard to find an answer to
Obviously,
this.
you get a burner phone.
Burner phone would help, actually. And actually, we talked about doing that, of getting just a Google Voice phone number that's just purely for emergent purposes that only a small number of people knew. But then we realized, well, somehow spammers always get a hold of these fucking things. So
That's
there's
true.
still no way. So anyway, I was looking for options. It sounds like on iOS there actually is a built-in solution to this, which is you can designate certain people in your favorites or something to be able to call through even when you're on, do not disturb or whatever. Android seems to have nothing like this, but Google does have an app called Trusted Contacts that I think they just bought from somebody else, where those people can just basically push a button and it'll cause your phone to vibrate and do all kinds of shit. It'll be like, where are you right now? Right. Or, so basically lets the person you need to know so that you can only put your contacts in there that you actually want to be able to bother you and then allow alerts for that thing only. And it's the whole thing is set up to sound like something horrible has happened. So it's perfect because nobody would ever use this for anything for an emergency. So that's,
is it just like a couple of predefined messages like in a Hearthstone?
No, it's not even a message. Just like all it does is it just says there's a button you can say, ask where they are right now. Right. And it causes your phone to vibrate and be like, where are you? So it's a pretty effective way to say like something's up and I need you to pay attention.
Yeah, you gotta be careful. This could become a cry wolf situation.
That's the thing is you have to not let it be a cry wolf
exactly.
situation. Yeah.
You got to lay down the ground rules.
Yep. But yeah, so there are ways, and I think it's fair that it's fair for somebody who is super important, who knows what kinds of situations are worth bothering you about.
Yes.
That they have some way to do that. Right.
And everybody else just can't.
Everybody else just can't. I think that's
fair.
That's fair. And that's the mechanism that I'm currently experimenting with. So we will see how
so
that
we'll report
goes.
back in a few weeks.
Yeah.
All right, so the next question comes from 30 Extra, who says, I noticed that Crashlands, despite being a pretty expansive game, is only 100 megabytes on mobile. What is this devilry? So interestingly, this is the iOS version, because the iOS version is 40 megabytes larger than the Android version, which is 60 megabytes.
Correct. Also the PC version, which is
about 60 megabytes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And most of that is actually audio.
Yeah.
I'd say, actually on
PC, I think it's 90 because we have the higher quality stereo audio.
Yeah. So something like on the mobile version, something like 30 or 40 megabytes is just audio files.
Yep.
And we got like 20 something megabytes of texture pages.
Yep.
And the rest is the code.
Yep.
So it's basically just we had to be real clever about stuff.
Yeah.
So anytime we had an art asset, we just used it once. So for example, like the arm of Flux is just copy pasted onto both sides. So it's the same arm on both parts of her body. Right. And if we have a piece of arm, like a glove, or whatever, then we have that image one time only. We slap it onto her body as like the in-game armor. Mm-hmm. When we display the item, we just use that same image and we just rotate it, whatever.
Yep.
So it's really, we just use
reduce, reuse, recycle.
Yeah. We use one image for one concept throughout everything.
You'll also notice that when characters turn their heads, they're just flipped. So they're just mirror images.
Yeah.
now.
We X flip the characters. The characters don't have any frames. There's no frame by frame animation except for under specific circumstances. Like, the Wampet has, two faces, one for charging up its attack and one for just neutral. Right. And so we tend to just kind of go real lean on stuff. Mm-hmm. And we like to really use a lot of programming, a lot of code systems to just make things interesting and bouncy.
It is cool in the new game. Because Seth's been sending us GIFs and stuff of the stuff that's getting kind of animated and showing the characters running around and doing stuff. And much more so than Crashlands, there's a lot more life in these characters. So that when they're sitting there, they're just kind of swaying.
We got idle animations.
And all is done again with the same. A character is a head, a torso, one leg, and one arm. And then you just make it we just dupe it and flip it. Yeah, dupe it, flip it, and then make the whole thing kind of sway and move so that it feels very alive. And then you just don't need that much.
Yeah, and I mean the characters in this new game, they're doing flips. Yeah. They're doing they're floating around. They're doing all kinds of like hand wavy moves, and we got some good ass animations with these characters.
It's gonna be really sweet.
And again, no frames at all.
So why is the iOS version an additional 30 megabytes?
There's just a lot of extra stuff that goes into an iOS build because of the fact that Apple likes everything to be just perfect. Yeah, absolutely perfect, right? So that means, for example, the splash screen that displays before you open up the game on iOS, it's a little loading screen, and it's like our box art. But there are lots and lots of different resolutions of device, and Apple wants to make sure that they display those loading screens pixel perfect, no stretching, no scaling, nothing. And so you need a loading screen for every combination of resolutions in both portrait and landscape mode.
Yeah.
So For an iPad Pro, you got to upload this, 2200 by 1500, whatever. For an iPad 2, even though it's the same aspect ratio, it's a totally different image.
Yep.
So you need one for portrait, one for landscape, right?
Yep.
So we just have
These are
tons.
all really big images, and
Yeah. So there's just lots and lots of extra imagery and stuff that goes with making sure the game looks presentable on the device. That on Android, there's like 14,000 unique devices. And even Google doesn't know what the fuck they are, right? So they're just like, hopefully you did the legwork to make sure it looks good.
Which is funny, dude, because the expectation is for the rest of the app or the game that it just dynamically behaves properly.
And if it doesn't, people just won't play it.
Yeah, but for some reason, when it comes to that loading screen, they're real precise. Right. And actually, don't we just use a black image?
Not for Crashlands.
Not for
We
Crashlands.
have box art. Yeah.
Right. Actually, I think we used to use a black image because
you could just do one image,
right?
But then
but then you could, and then we just figured,
change.
well, if we have to put 1,000 images in here, they might as well be good.
They might as well look good
instead of just a black image.
Yeah, so there's a lot that goes into it, but yeah, I mean, it just kind of comes down to knowing how you can use your assets and reuse them in all kinds of interesting ways.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I think it all comes from the fact that, and we were talking with Tifa about this earlier, because she was talking about how her sort of perception of the relationship between art and programming in game has been changing really rapidly after joining the studio, and it's because when the studio started, Sam didn't know how to do art. And so the goal was always do as little art as possible and make the most out of those assets that you do have. And Seth was still basically getting all of his programming chops. So it was the same deal there. It was, I need to have as few things as possible to deal with. So then in both of those cases turn out to make it so that the programming and the art just have to be just mutually intertwined as much as possible.
Yep.
And that's informed our entire design.
Yep. Yeah. And I think doing technical art is also, it's just very different from doing art. Is you just make an image. Yeah. Just an image of whatever size you want. You can like scale it up or scale it down if you need to put it on your DeviantArt page or whatever. Or if you're doing it for a client, you just want it big. Right. And then they'll like, trim it or whatever. And there's going to be some specs, but when it comes to something like making a character that is actually 4 unique pieces, one arm, one leg, head, and body. And then you're going to hand that off to a programmer who's going to just throw a bunch of weird voodoo into it and then make it start running around. And, it's just a totally different, you're building sort of like parts of a machine that have to obey certain rules. Yep. Right. So yeah, it's an interesting challenge. All right. So next question comes from Map5597. What's your take on people complaining about kids these days having it easy? Isn't making the world better and easier basically the goal of civilization?
I mean, not if I understand politicians correctly.
Yeah.
Apparently it's to make life as difficult as possible for no goddamn reason.
So I think this is actually an interesting question because, underlying this, it's easy as an older person to look at what kids are doing and say that they have it easy because of having access to certain things. Like, they can use Google, right? Mm-hmm. Like when I was under the age of probably 10, searching for things on the internet was not really a concept.
Yeah.
You just used encyclopedias, you went to the library or whatever. You'd find your 15-year out of date article and that's what you had. Right. And so there are things that are easier, definitely.
Yeah.
But
basically access to information.
Access to information is way easier. And also the types of careers I think that are around are more and more knowledge focused as time goes on, which means your options for like not having to just work your ass off and sweat all day. Those options improve year over year over year. Right. And so there are certain things that are easier. Also sickness. There are medical options available for people nowadays that just didn't used to exist. So it used to be the case, and maybe you got sick with something, and either you just had it, and that was it, or you died. Yep. Nowadays, you get to live or be more comfortable, right? Both of which are better, right? But I think there are certain things. So, for example, you have more access to information, but
not more education to help you know what to do with it.
Yes, and you also have a lot more. Well, actually, I mean, there's a lot of indication that education has actually gotten worse, right?
Yeah.
And there's also a lot more access to misinformation.
Yes.
And if you combine
You can't
that,
tell the difference.
yeah, and if you combine that with reduced funding for education and just generally not as good schooling,
Well, I think prior generations have also shown that they are incapable of identifying misinformation.
right,
So I think,
right. But now there's just so much of it. Right.
right. There's a lot more.
Yeah, and so people have gotten more information, but they haven't gotten the critical thinking skills to go with it. So that's interesting. And then also thinking about things like, you'd hear about people in the 70s, for example, saying, "Oh yeah, I got a summer job. I worked part time, and then I was able to pay for my next year of college." Right, because college tuition goes up at what's the annual rate?
That was like 10%,
10% per year, and it has been for 2 decades. So there's this thing called the rule of 70, or the rule of 7. Sorry. Which if you take, the rule of 70, if you take any percentage, it's like 10%. If you take 70 divided by that number, that's how long it takes for it to double, right? So something growing at 10% per year, 70 divided by 10 is 7. Every 7 years, college is twice as expensive as it was, right?
And if that rate is different than how much more money people make, which it has been.
And so wages,
really it's that difference that matters.
And like wages have been flat, right? Since the 70s, wages for except for super, super rich people, right? So wages for the average person have been pretty much unchanged in terms of buying power.
Which means that basically it has been twice as much, not just more costly because that's relative, but just actually relatively more expensive.
Yeah. And so, you'd hear about people in the 70s, they would work part-time in the summer, they would be able to pay for the next year of college, and then they could work a little bit during college. And then by the time they graduated, a year or two out, they're buying a house.
Yeah,
right?
because they don't have college.
They don't have debt, or if they do have debt, it's like so minuscule that they're just like whatever. But nowadays, you got people like we were mentioning earlier. You got people coming out of college, graduating with an art degree or something, and they got $150,000 of debt. And then people get pushed into college. There's this kind of expectation that you have to do it in order to be a participating member of society, which is bogus, but that gets put out there, right? And so.
But also when it was cheap, then that was fine.
Yeah.
Right. Because then it was a privilege to go, but also if you went, it wasn't going to cost you in your future. Right. It was only going to be a benefit in some fashion.
And now, our expectations of people haven't updated in the past 2 decades to reflect how expensive college now is. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think young people don't have the experience or the knowledge or the sort of mental framework because they just haven't been around long enough to be able to evaluate when a bunch of older folks tell them, you need to go to college. It's super, super important.
Yep.
They don't have the frame of mind to be able to go, no, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to do that thing that literally everybody who supposedly has more life experience than me is telling me is a good thing to do. Right.
Yep.
So I think price of college makes everything shittier.
Yeah.
And then medical things.
Yeah.
Like, yes,
you don't die anymore.
You don't die anymore.
You don't have any money.
Now you're bankrupt, right? And so just kind of as an example, when Sam had his couple of years of cancer treatments, thanks to Obama, thanks Obama.
For real though.
For real though, actually, yeah. He was able to remain financially solvent during that.
Yep.
But,
it still cost him something like $8,000 a year, something like that.
Which compared to what he would have paid, which is over $1 million. Yeah, pretty good, right?
It's pretty solid.
Yeah, and so thinking about and this is actually pretty recent, right? Because the Affordable Care Act was around 2010 or something like that.
Yeah, that's is I actually forgot that before that.
People just went bankrupt.
Well, and also the pre-existing conditions thing wasn't even there.
Or you just didn't get to have.
I forgot that was introduced by Obamacare. Before that, if you had cancer before you got insurance, they could just be like, nah.
Yeah.
And then you would just die.
You would just die.
And that was fine.
Yeah. So to be fair, because of the Affordable Care Act, people have it better now than they did 8 years ago.
Yeah.
For now.
For now.
So I mean, there
but it's
are
also
things,
very expensive.
There are things that are getting better, but it still is the case that, healthcare is incredibly expensive. And if you compound that with the price of paying down college debt or something like that, I think there's an interesting factor in young people's lives that people from previous generations don't quite think about is just the sheer volume of debt that young people have.
Yeah.
Fucking ludicrous.
It's insane.
And there's almost no way around it.
No, because you have to You have to get medical care, and you cannot get rid of your college debt in bankruptcy court.
Yep. And usually by the time you realize maybe I shouldn't have gone to college, you've already gone.
Yeah, you can't undo it.
Yeah.
And you weren't even allowed to make decisions about whether you could drink or not, but you were allowed to take on $100,000 in debt.
Yeah.
Right.
So
when you went to college, like, what the fuck? Like we don't trust you to make decisions because drinking is you can't drink. What else? You can't vote even. You can't even fucking vote.
No, you can vote at 18.
Is it 18? Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. You can at 18.
You can be drafted and vote.
You can
You
can go murder people and be murdered. You can vote. You can smoke, but you can't drink.
You can't drink.
For some
and
reason.
I believe in some states you can't gamble until you're 21. Because you got to be responsible. You can
gamble on your
you can take on $100,000 loan, but you can't drop $50 on a slot machine or whatever. And you definitely can't smoke weed anywhere.
No, ever.
So because that's all right. So I want to hit one more question. We're a little bit over time, but that one got ominous.
It did. But was there did we need to conclude something there? I feel like we just left it hanging.
Well,
what was the question?
It's just what's your take on people complaining about kids these days having it easy? So it's
they're
basically,
wrong, I guess.
They're wrong. Shit's hard in different ways.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. That's the way it's always going to be.
But the interesting thing is that all the ways that it's hard are just the fault of other people. It used to be like when you were a person, it used to be hard just to be alive because there were limited resources. The world was trying to kill you. Yeah. Like we didn't have technology. We couldn't build stuff.
And now like we could have all these things resolved.
Yeah. We just
don't.
have chosen not to.
Yeah. Or rather some older folks.
Some older folks have
chosen not to, generally speaking.
And then younger generations are following in the same footsteps.
Yeah. They were elected.
Yeah.
So
we can never get away from the idiocy.
Yep. Just have compassion, people. You know, just do that. All right. So we'll hit one more question, which is from Error Code. Speaking of kids these days.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm a fan of your work. I'm also soon 14 years old and an indie dev. Oh, this is a little older question, so they might be 35 by now.
Yeah, it's possible.
I've released 2 Game Maker Studio games. I also have a budget of €0. So they didn't say how many of other currencies.
That's probably like
$1,000
US.
Yeah. Do you have any tips for indie devs or kids like me? So not specifically like just tips for indie devs, but more importantly, younger people with no money wanting to make games. So
mostly nice work starting this early.
Yeah. I didn't start until I was 23.
Yeah.
So good on you.
So you got a leg up.
You got like a 10-year lead.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you give a shit this much now to spend your time as a kid learning hard stuff and
you're
practicing a craft, you're fine.
Yeah. I would say there's something that I've always thought is kind of cool about making games, which is it encompasses everything. Like anything that you can think of, you can find a way to use that knowledge in game development.
Mm-hmm.
So psychology, art, storytelling, music, cinematography, even just like general film, engineering, obviously, programming, whatever it is, even architecture, there's so many things that you can learn that you can just apply directly in video games. Because what you're doing in video games is you are creating simulations of universes, right? With specific rule sets that you came up with.
Yeah. It's a stellar cross-disciplinary field.
So there's never any end to the types of things that you can learn. And so I think my advice especially for a younger person, but it really applies to anybody, is you should really just kind of take joy in the fact that you are learning to do a thing that is so all-encompassing that you just get to keep learning awesome shit your whole life.
Yeah, everything applies.
Everything applies. And so like I was really bummed out because Sam and I went to speak to a game dev class one year. And they were showing off their final projects, and we were invited to go and sort of give feedback and evaluate these final projects. And one of the students went up and was showing his game, and he said, and it was just very rough looking. Like the color palette was really harsh on the eyes. It was kind of an MS Paint job kind of a thing, And he came up there and he specifically made the point to say to the rest of the students, he said, "I hate art. So I just didn't really bother with it." And so he made his game, and he just decided that he just wasn't going to enjoy or care about this particular part of it. right?
Which is
And-
an interesting defense mechanism that most people use, where a thing that they are not good at,
they just decide they hate
they
it.
decide to hate instead.
And then that's why they continue to be bad at it. It's not because, and this is a thing called self-handicapping.
Yeah.
Which is it's a psychological defense mechanism that people use where I think we maybe have talked about it in the past.
Seems
but
likely.
But it's that same thing that happens when somebody goes, like somebody doesn't study for a test,
Mhm.
right? And they go and they take the test and either they fail and they go, well, that's just because I didn't study.
Yep.
Or and so they have a reason.
Also, I hate English.
I hate English. So
Or whatever.
right? So they have a reason for getting that F and it's exactly as they planned.
Mhm.
So really they were successful because their plan came through,
Yep.
right? Or they actually get a decent grade on it, in which case they're just a genius,
Yep.
right? So you win either way.
Didn't even study. They didn't even like it, and still.
Because this is a prisoner's dilemma situation where, because the other alternative is you actually apply some effort and the possible outcomes are you get a good grade, which is great because you put forth the effort, right? But you would have felt good about it if you had not tried and gotten a good grade.
Because
right?
we're also taught that having done something really well is more important than the work that you put in to get there.
Right.
So that's why people are always giving accolades for being smart
Yeah.
instead of working their asses
Right.
off. Right.
And so you study hard and you do well, which is good. There's a possibility that you could have done well without studying, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you study hard and you fail, or you get a worse grade than you hoped, in which case you have to confront the problem that you may not understand this as well as you thought,
Mm-hmm.
or that you didn't put in as much work as you should have. Well, there's some other factor. Maybe the test was unfair, whatever. But the fact is you tried and you didn't succeed, right?
Mhm.
Which is a hard thing to deal with. And so it's easier for people to just not try, right? And declare that they're not going to try and just sort of swim in the garbage, right?
Yep.
And so this is the same scenario of this student coming up and declaring that they hate art. Now they definitely weren't going to put forth an effort, and that is why their game looked hideous, because it's exactly as they planned, right?
Mhm.
They needed it to look hideous because they wanted to make a statement about how much they hate art.
But really, they should just be embarrassed about how shitty of a game they
Yeah.
made.
And then they're making everybody else look at it.
Yeah.
I don't want to look at that.
That's offensive.
Yeah. So I think, when it comes to making games, the attitude that you should take, this applies to everything, but the attitude that you should take is you should just relish the fact that you get to learn awesome stuff. You get to learn new skills and be okay with the fact that there's some things you're going to be bad at for now, right?
Well, you're going to be bad at everything when you start.
I'm not saying like be okay with being bad at things, but just understand that that's the way it is until you put time into those things.
Yeah.
And don't just announce that you are bad at them and that's just the way it's always going to be. And don't announce that you hate that thing and then just use that as a crutch to perpetually suck at it, right?
Mhm.
Use those as opportunities to, find your weak points and learn and improve.
Mhm.
So,
And even Joe, you see this programming all the time too, right? I see now that I've been using JavaScript almost exclusively for my day-to-day programming. The thing I see super frequently is people complaining about how much they hate JavaScript. And I did when I started it because I found it so baffling.
Yeah.
But I read a bunch of stuff on how to use it the way that it was designed and, what its kind of design intent is and how different it is from other languages so that I could actually use it as it was. And now it's a really fun, expressive, awesome language to use. And now I see all these other people doing what I did, which is they're confronted with it. And people do this with Game Maker language too.
oh yeah.
They look at it. It doesn't do what they
Are
already
used
know.
to. Yeah.
So now you hate it.
So they hate it. And now they begrudgingly.
Right. And then they use it poorly and refuse to learn how to use it properly. And the whole rationale for this is that thing is bad, not I'm doing a bad job at, because I was doing a bad job at JavaScript.
Yeah. Because it's
That's why I
easier to
sucked at
blame
it.
the other thing. You pick up a hammer and you miss the nail and you're like, fuck hammers.
Yeah.
No, it's
Yeah.
like you just missed.
Because there are better tools for certain jobs and you should always strive to get a better tool,
Yeah.
but you should never blame the tool. You should always blame yourself.
Yeah. Or
It's a good note to end
if
on.
you're so fucking brilliant, make a better tool.
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah. Anyways.
Smarty McSmartpants.
All right. Well, my coffee's empty, so I
Is
think
mine? Oh man.
I think we're done here. So we'd like to thank our producer Fat Bard. Normally at this point we'd thank our studio wrangler Monique, but she is away.
She's not wrangling this week.
She didn't wrangle us. We self-wrangled.
Mhm.
So we'd like to thank ourselves for pulling this
Mhm.
podcast episode
And
together.
specifically give no thanks to Monique
Yeah.
for not helping.
Yeah. Thanks for nothing. Specifically this week. But seriously,
Money's great.
money's great.
Yeah.
So, and also, we'd like to thank the Butterscotch dev team for continuing to be, jamming in the other room, building stuff and making cool things while we're in here hooting and hollering. And of course,
Lollygagging.
we'd like to thank all of our listeners for coming back every week and listening to us have a little honky tonk. And also, we don't advertise this show, so we depend completely on word of mouth and good reviews on various platforms. So if you want to help us grow this show, let your friends know, tell your grandma, tell your dog's grandma, and go to wherever you can rate this thing.
And then do that.
And put some stars on it.
Yeah. As many as will fit.
Yeah. Hopefully 5
or more.
So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week. And of course, if you want to get your questions on next week, hit us up at podcast.bscotch.net. All right. Peace.
Goodbye.